Hello, and welcome to the Migraine Oasis podcast, where we'll help you achieve more pain-free days by tackling the root causes that keep you stuck in the pain cycle. Our goal is to help you heal from the inside out for sustainable results. We'll cover everything you need for a holistic and mind-body approach to healing. From understanding how pain works to uncovering areas of tension within the mind, body, and spirit that can trigger your pain, and sharing practical tips to break free and find relief. I'm your host, Karen Ash, a former chronic migraine sufferer, certified coach, patient advocate, and migraine mentor here to support your healing journey. If you're ready to change your relationship with migraine and get back to living, let's dive in. You can obviously have really good holidays with your family, you're seeing friends, you're maybe having traditions that, come up only once a year. You have foods that are specific to this holiday potentially. And so there's a lot of good and joy that can come around the holidays. But what I want to talk about is that it also has the potential for a lot of stressors. I want to talk about what those stressors may be so you can anticipate them, what to do about them, how to ensure that this stress doesn't trigger some mind body symptoms to come up. Potentially, you're doing a lot of work right now and the symptoms are going down. You don't want them to get re-triggered or to have a flare up in the pain. Now, it may happen. It's quite normal that it could, but I want to equip you with a plan so that hopefully does not happen. One thing to point out before we get started is just because you're going into a potentially stressful situation doesn't mean that your progress in this healing journey is going to necessarily backslide. It doesn't quite work like that. It's usually more of a prolonged period of time that your body is in this fight or flight nervous system state that then gets really dysregulated. There's all kinds of different stages of this healing journey. You may not have any symptoms and you're just listening because you want to have help in navigating the holidays because you anticipate the stress coming and you want to avoid any mind body symptoms that arise. You might be having some symptoms and you don't want them to become chronic, or you just want some support around the holidays. And you may be on the other spectrum where you have chronic symptoms. You've been actively knowing about this work and doing the work to decrease them, and you don't want to flare over the holiday season. So I'll be talking to each one of those. This video will incorporate at any stage. It could be helpful to you. What the goal of this video is to help you navigate the holidays with ease so that you have some strategies in place so that you can regulate the nervous system even in times of stress. It's really hard sometimes to not get triggered by people and places that are triggering, but with a little preparation, I think it goes a long way to keep everything as minimalized as possible. The other thing is you don't want to go into this expecting problems, because where you expect problems, you probably get problems, if you know what I mean. So going into this as positively as you can, that you're going to have a nice time with your friends or your family. It's going to be a good experience, and try to minimize this negativity going in. You'll be well prepared after this video and a little bit of thinking on your side then of how you can incorporate some of these ideas, and you'll be in good shape. But so try to go into it with a positive attitude as well. Let's first start by talking about some of the stressors. What can they be? So one thing would be that you want everything perfect. If you're anything like a type T personality trait that typically has chronic pain and symptoms, you're a perfectionist, you may be kind of wired tight, you like things in order, you are a people pleaser, you have all these different traits that around the holiday, especially if you're hosting, could flare up internal stressors. So one of them could be if you're cooking for a large group, you want everything on time, or you want to have things just right, everything perfectly planned. If you're going somewhere, to make sure that the holiday trip is planned in a good way. These kind of things can come up as stressors. It could be a stressor for finances. If you're the one hosting and you need to buy all the supplies and the food and all these things, that could put a stress on your budget, or going somewhere and the gifts and that sort of thing. You're going back to the childhood home potentially, and whether you feel like you've had a good childhood or not, there are sometimes stressors that are back in the unconscious that can be triggered. Things that you're not even aware of, but you get triggered potentially being back in that environment. And that goes along with also the family dynamics. You kind of go into the same patterns or the same roles that you had in the family unit growing up. And sometimes that can be triggering. You could also have certain people or family members that are specifically triggering. If there's a specific person that you know is going to be talking about topics of maybe the politics in the United States that you really want to avoid, maybe that's something that you're anticipating already. Or there's a person that you have had a falling out with that's going to be there, or somebody that tends to drink heavily when they're at family events and it's a toxic environment to be around once they've had a certain amount to drink and you're wanting to navigate that. There's all these different stressors of people and the dynamics and all this that come up. There's also a time pressure in some cases. So if you're going back to a location that you're maybe there only for a week and you're trying to fit in family and see friends, and this is your 1 week of holiday maybe for the year, and you're trying to fit everything in. You want your own traditions, you want to be doing some things with your own family. And so it's this time pressure and pressure cooker that you're trying to fit everything in, make everybody happy, do everything that you want to do in that time, and to be able to relax also if this is your holiday. Another one would be the added events and socializing. So if you're an introvert, that could be very stressful, all these different activities that are going on and you're not so keen to go maybe. Or you're being invited to things and you're feeling like, I don't know, I remember just being scared to say yes to things because I didn't know how I was going to feel, if I was going to have a migraine that day or not. So I'd say yes, but then, half the time everybody knew that, Karen canceled half the time. And so that came with guilt then, and I felt bad. And that adds pressure because there's more events and you want to feel well, you want to go do things, but there's just such a question mark if you're in chronic pain and having symptoms. I want to also acknowledge that the holidays are really sad for a lot of people. There's a lot of lonely people that don't have anywhere to go, or maybe they've lost a loved one and this is the first holiday that they're without their loved one, or there's all kinds of different scenarios. So I want to acknowledge that. And to those people, I want to make sure that you know that you're seen as well in this, and that hopefully there is support that you can get over the holidays if you are feeling down. Also acknowledge that there's some country specific stressors. There's a lot of wars going on right now. There's a lot of conflict. And you could either potentially be a refugee in another country. I know many Ukrainians that are here in Switzerland, and they're away from their loved ones and they're away from their home and their traditions and the things that they're used to and their foods and all these other things. So I know that's a real struggle, but there's also active wars in different places that there's people feeling unsafe. So I want to acknowledge that first of all. And a second kind of country specific thing is the US and this political situation. It's very, very triggering for a lot of people. And while one candidate won, the other candidate had 74 million people voted for that person that are very disappointed right now, that are not happy going into some of these discussions. Even if you're on the same side politically, it might feel very triggering to still have those conversations of, oh, can you believe they did this? Can you believe that happened? This nomination wants to be appointed. Can you believe that? Like all these different things, even if you're on the same side, could be very upsetting to the nervous system. So there's a lot of things going on socially, and I'm not naming many, many more things going on in countries, but I'm American. This is something that's on my mind, especially going into the holidays. I know that this is going to be some challenging times for some people that are having family members that are either on separate sides, and it may trigger some conversations that will be upsetting, or just the stress in general over that. Next, I want to just give you a couple main points. Then I'll go into the 5 strategies that I have that you can use, and then go into some specific tools that you can also use. First point I want to stress is this mind body connection that we all have. And if you've been following my work for any time, you probably understand by now. But for anyone who hasn't heard this, it is the fact that any stress, known or unknown to us, so there's a lot of stress going on in the unconscious side of the brain. So emotional things that happen in our childhood, or traumas that happen in our adulthood that we just never emotionally processed because we were too busy to do so, we weren't capable of doing so, it was just too upsetting at the time, whatever the case may be. There's other stressors that are our personality types. If we're perfectionistic and some of the stuff that I mentioned before, that we are a caregiver and we're lacking our own self-care, or we have no self-compassion. We just have this inner critic that's beating us up all day. These are things that are feeling like a threat to the brain and is causing then mind body symptoms to come up because it's dysregulating the nervous system. It's keeping us in this fight or flight nervous system state that then is signaling to the brain that there's all kinds of trouble. We're in danger. There's a threat there. And sometimes it will provide us with mind body symptoms. So that would be neuroplastic pain, migraine, back pain, hip pain, knee pain. It can be, the brain can choose anywhere that it has control over, and it has control over everywhere. So it can show up in any part of the body, IBS, pelvic floor, all kinds of things. So these things are real. They are caused by the brain, not by something physically wrong in the body. And so this is there's evidence on this. It's the latest in neuroscience of pain and where the neural pathways in the brain have something to do with it and how this can be reversed basically. And so I've cured myself from 34 years of migraine. I've seen it in thousands of people now in all these different communities that I'm in, and talking to different doctors and practitioners that I'm friends with and their clients and their patients. So it is definitely a thing. It may sound strange if it's the first time you're hearing this, but I really encourage you, especially if you have any of the things that I just mentioned, to look into this because it really is helping a lot of people. I just got certified in pain reprocessing therapy, PRT, and that stems from the work of Alan Gordon. He has a book called The Way Out, which I highly recommend as well. But anyway, that goes into a little bit more of some of the strategies behind how you get out of chronic pain and symptoms, etc. But that's not what this video is about. Why I'm making this video, because people that are in chronic pain and symptoms have a tendency to possibly have a flare during stressful periods of time. So that's one thing, that just to know that this mind body system and connection exists and that it has the potential to cause symptoms. Okay, that's the first one. Second one would be preparing for the holiday before it happens is crucial, because without it, you're just going in blind and you're just being triggered by things. You're reacting in the moment. You may have a dysregulated nervous system, meaning you're not real coming from this ease and flow of life. You're already coming at it from this kind of agitated or intense state that typically the brain doesn't make the greatest decisions in. So you're reactive, or you're very emotionally charged, or it's like a hairline trigger that you get reactive very quickly. So this kind of thing is why we go into the holidays with a plan. And without further ado, let me tell you what the strategies could be for you. So one would be anticipating those stressful scenarios that I mentioned. Maybe you thought, yeah, okay, that one, yeah, that sounds like me. Hopefully not all of them, but you already have in mind maybe some of them. And I'll write them in the show notes so you don't have to go back and look. What I would suggest is that from that list, review what you think and anticipate could be a problem. Now, I'm not saying, definitely not saying, go back through and find scenarios of all the what ifs that could happen. And no, that's the exact opposite of what I want you to do, because the only thing that that does is add more stress, and it tells the brain, oh, we're going into a major problem and there's a big threat and you're going to need to protect me in some way. And it could end up in pain. That's not what we want. We want to lower the stakes, lower the stress on all this. So what I'm asking you to do is just go back and look at those scenarios of the possible stressors. Pick out maybe one or two things that you anticipate, maybe from past experience, or things that have come up in this last year that you anticipate potentially could be a stressor in those events. And if you are in chronic pain or have pain and symptoms and migraine, I obviously specialize in migraine, but why I'm talking about these other symptoms as well is because a lot of people with migraines have other health symptoms. So it's not just the migraine, but sometimes I feel it in my back. Sometimes I feel it in my stomach. I get stomach aches, or my shoulders get really tense. So that's why I sprinkle in these other mind body symptoms a lot, because while I focus on migraine, there are co symptoms in almost every case. Another stressor that could come up that I didn't mention before is that if you are on this healing journey already, in this kind of third stage that I was talking about, that you're already working on this, you're already maybe feeling some relief from your symptoms. It may come up in conversation when you're with the family or friends of, oh, I thought you have a bad back. You shouldn't pick up that thing. Or, oh, why are you having that second glass of wine? You have migraines. At one point, a friend of mine put her hand over my glass actually and told the waiter, oh no, she can't have a second glass because she'll get a migraine. That's how convinced everybody. I mean, it was 34 years of people knowing me with migraine. And I was convinced that was my trigger. But so when you realize you don't have some of these triggers anymore and that you are feeling better, this may come up like, oh, what's going on with you? It's very difficult to explain this work that we do with trying to regulate the nervous system and where the stressors come from. And quite frankly, some of the stressors are the people sitting in the room. So you have to just kind of, before you even go into that, if you are feeling well, and you anticipate some of those conversations, just figure out how much you want to talk about that and how you want to talk about it. My family were happy, obviously, that I was getting less and less migraine, but it almost caused me a little bit of more of a problem because anytime I would have one, then I would get comments like, well, what are you stressed about? Are we stressing you out? What's the problem? I thought you were cured. I thought this was not a problem anymore. And it just added more angst to me. So it's sort of like I almost wish I just kept quiet and just they eventually would have realized that I had less symptoms, and was acting a bit differently or was engaged a lot more. But yeah, you just have to choose that for yourself of how you want to go about that. But just something I thought maybe was relevant for somebody. The second strategy would be to try to lower the stakes and intensity to what is going on. So, in some of those scenarios of what could cause stress, maybe it's the perfectionism, and you're the one who's having the holidays and you're trying to get everything ready, and you know this is going to be agitating the personality traits that are going to cause you a lot of stress. So, trying to lower the stakes would be focusing on the time that you're going to have with the family. And does it really matter if you're getting to the last minute and Uncle Bob's favorite cookies aren't made yet? Is it really the end of the world that Uncle Bob doesn't get those cookies this year? That's a silly example, maybe, but do you really need to stay up till midnight to do some of these things? You know what I mean? Just keep your perfectionism ways in check is all I'm trying to say. Another one would be the child at home. If you know that this is going to be a trigger already, can you maybe journal about that before you go and express some of those emotions that are coming up? If you're in coaching or have a therapist, can you have that as a topic to talk about beforehand? So just to get some of the emotion out, but also get some strategies in place for that and just to lower the stakes. It's just a home. You don't live there anymore. You don't have to stay there. Just putting it into perspective, kind of reframing it, that sometimes takes the stress away from that. Socializing is one of the stress points. Maybe it's that you look at the calendar and you just pick and choose which ones you're going to feel more comfortable at. And when you don't feel like you can go to one of the events, just simply say, sorry, I'm unavailable this year to attend. Or something very simple. You don't have to go into a big explanation of, oh, I feel overwhelmed and I don't want to overextend myself, or I don't want this to trigger my symptom. You don't have to get into all that. Just a simple, would love to attend, but unfortunately I can't this year. Enjoy, wishing you and your family, happy holiday, something like that. That's as simple as it can be. If it's a dynamic with family members or other people, to lower the stakes might be just to go into this thinking, okay, I'm going to try to set some boundaries. And if it doesn't go perfectly to plan, it's a learning. I'm going to do some things differently maybe next year, or try to have some different things in place that kind of lower that bar, that you're already going to have some strategies that I'm going to talk about in a minute, but also lowering the pressure on yourself that everything needs to go to plan or else you're going to be miserable there. Give yourself some wiggle room essentially to lower the stakes and the intensity around the dynamic of this. Strategy 3 would be creating some boundaries. And what's important to know about this is that a boundary is not about setting it against someone. It's for you, for your peace of mind, for your comfort level, whatever the case may be. that is a very different energy than I'm setting this boundary because you can't do that to me and I don't want to put up with this and da 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 da. Can you feel the difference in that? And you deserve to have a boundary in place for whatever you feel is needed. It's going to potentially come with pushback because if you have been a people pleaser, if you have been somebody that is going overboard to help other people and you set a boundary or you're now starting to get really firm in your stance on things, that's going to make people either maybe uncomfortable or people that have benefited from you being a people pleaser and doing things the way they like to do or doing things for them going to like you not doing that anymore, right? So you have to know that this could come with some pushback, but that's okay. This is a learning. And what I learned definitely in the last couple months, I had a situation where I tried to keep a boundary that I just thought I failed miserably at this. And when I really started taking a look at it and reframing it to I learned a lot on that. I realized what I did wrong in the boundary, how I didn't hold the boundary, what I would do next time, that kind of thing. But in the moment, when I was really upset with myself over it, I thought, Karen, why are you going down that rabbit hole? Just be in the moment at this time. It didn't go to plan, and now you have the learnings for the next time. So just try to keep it a little bit easy as well. There's some boundaries that you need to keep, and it's an absolute. And then just know that there's some that it's just a test to see how this goes. It depends on the situation, I guess you would say. I want to give more of a concrete example. So back to this political situation, because I do anticipate this being a problem for some in the US. You can set an external boundary where beforehand you contact family members and just say, hey, this topic is so triggering. Can we just all agree that we just keep this to a nice, happy family event, that we don't get into these big discussions? It really is triggering for me. I'm trying to keep my stress low. I really would appreciate us not getting into a lot of debate over this, or something to that effect. And then on the flip side of that, a boundary with yourself. So there's two types of boundaries, one that you're keeping within yourself and one that you keep externally for others. So the boundary within yourself needs to be, okay, now that I've stated this is my desire or this is my wish to keep this boundary of political talks to a minimum or not in front of me or however you want to phrase it, it's what will you do then in the case that this arises? What is your boundary? What is your hard line? So if it does come up as an example, and say a conversation does start, you could either say, hey, I thought we discussed this. I really would rather not be in this discussion and walk off. That could be an option. You could fly off the handle and be in a rage and you didn't listen to me and I told you and get all upset about it and dysregulate your nervous system. And I mean, it's a choice. That is an option. There's another option to have strategies in place if this does happen. Maybe take a walk, maybe play with a family pet or one of the children, or go into another room, do one of the techniques that I tell you about in the end, these type of things. So there's all different ways, but it's boundaries within boundaries, essentially. Another note on this is when boundaries come up, there's a good chance that you get gaslit for that. And what that is that somebody says, oh, you're being a baby, you're being too sensitive. Why can't you handle these discussions? Or saying things that are even more triggering. And the answer to that is, yeah, in your opinion, okay, but I still choose to not participate, period. It's really just to maintain what you feel is needed for preserving your inner peace and your mental health and everything else in this. That is what is very important in this discussion and why we're doing this entire episode. Strategy 4 would be to have an exit strategy. So, say you're feeling very overwhelmed and it's just not going to plan. You need to figure out a way that you can take a break. So, the things that I mentioned before of taking a walk or going into another room or going with another family member, that kind of thing, that's one way of doing it. But also remind yourself during this time that this is one day or whatever the case may be, one day or a weekend or 1 week out of the year. And you need to choose then how to manage within that time. If you're absolutely 100% uncomfortable and this feels toxic to your health, then absolutely you need to come up with an exit plan. So, is there an excuse you can make? And this is something to think about beforehand if you anticipate it getting that bad. What could be your excuse that you need to leave a little bit earlier? That's completely within your prerogative and within your right to do so. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. Again, it doesn't have to be escalating into, I'm uncomfortable with this, or it's just making an excuse of, listen, we've got to go because, I don't know, you can come up with something. As Gabor Mate says, and I never know if I'm saying his name right, sorry, that when you cannot say no, your body will for you. And that's so powerful because that's saying when you can't stick up for yourself, when you can't say no and set a boundary or take a stance that is not out of guilt and not out of resentment and making the choice for you, what's best for you, when you can't do that, your body is going to do it for you. It's going to present you with symptoms and pain and other things that are going to take you out of the game. They're going to give you the migraine that puts you in the dark room and not able to participate. Or it's going to put you on the toilet because your stomach is so upset because you've been upset this whole time. So it's going to remove you from the situation in some way. And what we're trying to avoid is not having those type of symptoms come up. Those are very common ones. Maybe not migraine, but headaches. I mean, when people are stressed, headache is a very common thing. And also stomach issues and irritable bowel and stuff like that. These are the common mind body connection things that come up. So let's make sure that we're doing everything in our power to speak up for ourselves and to say what our needs are and our piece before the body does. The main point there. Strategy 5 is self care. Self care, self care, self care, and self compassion is another big one. So to just take care of yourself before the holidays, during the holidays, and after the holidays. Come up with things that are going to self soothe throughout. And if this is your only holiday, make sure that you're carving out time also to make sure you get what you need to be recharged before you go back to work. This could be anything from doing something nice for yourself or doing a gratitude list of things that you're really grateful for in this moment, something to make your inner world feel calm and soothed and doing things that make yourself happy and having this inner peace and this ease and flow through life instead of this intensity and this bracing for the worst. So anything that brings you that, it could be artwork, it could be going out in nature, it could be self-care is everything. Everything and anything that makes you happy, essentially. It could be dancing, it could be singing, it could be working out if that's your thing, playing with your dog, whatever, whatever. It's important. Do it. Lastly, let's get to some tools. So you have some practical tools of even in the moment you can do, or to get ready, or if something has been triggering to kind of calm down after the fact. It can be done in many different ways. The first one is to ground in this 5 4 3 2 1. I don't know if you've heard of this technique, but it's a very good one for anxiety. And it can be done at a dinner table if you're getting overstimulated and you're hearing conversations and you're just getting irritated in general. It could be on the plane going, it could be in the car ride, it could be whatever. Nobody knows what you're doing. So what it is I have to read because I always forget the order. And I don't think the order really matters, but it's 5 things you see. So just spot 5 things you see, and it keeps you in the here and now, in the moment. So you're looking, okay, I see a book, I see this, da, da, da. 4 things that you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And that just anchors you into this present moment. It doesn't matter. Don't get caught up in the which is the 5. Well, I forget which one she said was the 3. I'll write it in the show notes so you don't have to pause this and write it down. I've seen it done. You find 5 things that are red, 5 things that are green, 5 things that are soft or whatever. You can do it in many ways, but just play a game with yourself. It removes you from the stimulus that's upsetting you at the moment and just ground you back into the present. So that's the first one. It's called 5 4 3 2 1 method. Next one is somatic tracking. And this is a part of this pain reprocessing therapy that Alan Gordon teaches. Somatic is in the body. That's what somatic means. And so you're feeling within your body what is arising. So as the conversation is going on, do you feel your stomach tensing? Do you feel flushed in your chest? Do you feel your heart ache in some way? Do you feel tension rising in your shoulders? Like what is happening physically in the body? and then just noticing it. And again, this is something you could be doing just as everybody's sitting and chatting, or you're kind of zoning in your own little world a little bit, but you're just noticing with curiosity. Just, that's interesting. Oh, there's a little ache in my hip. Hmm, okay. Yeah, there's this happening. Oh, my digestion's working. I hear a grumble in my stomach. Just all the different like nuances that are going on in your body, and just track it and just observe, and again, puts you back into your body. And there's other techniques for if you're in pain of how to do that. But for this instance of being in a stressful situation, that could work. Breathing exercises. There's two that I would recommend. One is either a box breath, which is you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold it again. So you're breathing, hold, breathe out, hold, breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. And it's just on a 4 count of all of them. So that's a pretty easy one. It's a box you can think of. The other one is 4, 7, 8. So you're breathing in for 4, holding for 7, and out for 8. Again, I'll write this in the show notes so you don't have to write this down. And anytime you're breathing out longer than breathing in, it has this calming effect to the nervous system. So that's another one that, you don't have to be real dramatic about it. Like, just like casually, nobody knows what you're doing. I do this on the tram sometimes or in meetings. It works very well. So that's another technique. Another powerful one is affirmations or mantras of just as you're feeling a little bit agitated, just to say, this moment will pass. I can handle this. Just one step in front of the other. Try to get some phrases in mind that you can use for yourself in these moments of stress. And so, in conclusion, the recaps of the key points, it is preparing for the stress, setting boundaries, having the tools in place to calm your nervous system, to make you feel more regulated, to make you feel more in control of the situation, and prioritizing your self care and yourself in these moments. You're not going to be able to control every single moment, what everybody's going to do, how the situation goes. But the one thing that you can control is your reaction to it and the preparation that you do ahead of time or in the moment to keep yourself regulated. That is one thing that you do have control over, and your thoughts and the negative thinking that you have versus trying to navigate this in a way that is going to work in your best interest to keep your brain feeling that everything's safe, I'm fine, we're good here, no need to spike any symptoms, and hopefully navigate the holidays with a bit more joy and flow and ease. And like I said before, don't go into this bracing for the problem. I'm giving you scenarios so that you can think them through ahead of time. And again, like I said, a few of them. Don't go overboard with this exercise and map out every what if that can possibly happen. That is definitely not what I'm suggesting here. It's just to get you thinking about it. Maybe in the moment when you're there, you think like, oh yeah, that lady said, da, da, da. Okay, and an idea pops in your head. I hope so. Great. I hope that nothing happens. I hope that this is all preparation for nothing, that you just go and you have a great time and you see people that you haven't seen in a while and you just feel loved and you feel appreciated and everything's great. That is a possibility that it could go that way. So anticipate that as well. And lastly, if you've enjoyed the content, if you want some more resources for migraine specifically, I would suggest I've got on the website, there's a free guide that is the 5 things that I wish I knew sooner to get me out of chronic pain. That might be helpful. Maybe not for the holidays, but for you and your symptoms in general. There's the podcast or YouTube video, Instagram. I do have a Facebook group called Migraine Oasis private group, and it's really small right now. I think there's like, I don't know, there's a handful of people. I would love to grow that community. And especially if you are somebody that's going to be alone for the holidays, you don't feel like you have people that support you right now, please go and join that group because I want to see you. I want to acknowledge you over this holiday. And if you need support, I want to be in there. And anybody else who's having chronic symptoms, it doesn't have to be just migraine, but I am going to be talking a lot about migraine. Just know that. But it is pretty interchangeable with all these other mind body symptoms. So just note that. But I know migraine. I had them for 34 years. So this is why I wanted a community that is understanding what people are going through when we say migraine, because it's a very unique thing that affects the whole body sometimes. And so this will be definitely conversations going on a lot around migraine. But I want to keep it open as far as everybody's welcome. If you need support, if you want more tools, if you want more information about how to keep out of chronic symptoms, understand how symptoms become chronic, etc., and get out of pain, then all these things could potentially work. And comment and let me know what you try over the holidays. I'm really curious what works. If any of this was helpful, I don't know. I hope so. And yeah, keep yourself healthy. That is the main point. And it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to be okay and to have a fierce protection over your own well being because it's not selfish. I really feel strongly about that. I have a very, very fierce protection of myself now, and things that go against my well being, people, places, all of it just have to be reprioritized at some point in an effort to heal and get well and get your life back. I mean, if you're in chronic pain, you're literally getting your life back when you start getting out of pain. So nothing is worth having that spike symptoms again. But again, like I said before, not to scare you, it's not that this little blip of stress is a part of human life. So stress is going to come all the time. You're going to get stress in work and relationships and whatever. So stress is around all the time. That's not something to fear. It's just something to know that it has the ability to dysregulate the nervous system and not to stay there, to do these techniques that I taught you and other ones that can help you regulate the nervous system and come back down and not stay in that fight or flight. All right, I hope that makes sense, and I will see you soon. Take care and really have a happy holiday and be well. Thanks for tuning in to the Migraine Oasis. I hope today's episode has inspired you to explore new approaches and provide some actionable steps you can use. Check out the show notes for any of the links of resources mentioned. If you found this valuable, please follow and subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others. This greatly helps our algorithm to ensure that this information gets out to more people who can benefit. If you're not already a part of the Migraine Oasis online community, check us out and stay tuned for more support, relief, and healing throughout the week. Until next time, stay hopeful and believe that more pain-free days are in your future. We're honored to support your healing journey. Take care of yourself and be well.